Hey everybody, I'm Conrad Snover. You're about to listen to the real Jason Duncan. He and I chatted on his podcast, The Root of All Success, and man, I've really enjoyed the conversation. We talked about real things. We talked about business. We're both in business. He wants to know about the business and how business success and is driven, what the causes are, and what people focus on, and why successes are. And what you're going to find in this podcast is we talked about some real foundational things that drive success, not just the usual stuff you read in a business book. We're going to get into some great ideas. So buckle up, join us.
Welcome to the Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan, a podcast that explores how the world's most powerful entrepreneurs unlocked success and how their stories can help you do the same. A successful educator turned entrepreneur, Jason has built multi-million-dollar businesses that have been featured in Inc. magazine and Entrepreneur magazine. His life's mission now is helping entrepreneurs live what he calls #the exit lifestyle. Introducing TEDx speaker, mastermind leader, author, entrepreneur, cigar aficionado, motorcycle enthusiast, and host of The Root of All Success, the real Jason Duncan. The real Jason Duncan.
Welcome back to another episode of the show. I'm your host, the real Jason Duncan. I have Conrad Snover with me today. One of the cool things about doing this show, as you know, as a listener, is I get to bring on people that in my normal walks of life, I probably would never meet. And they're really successful, cool people. And that's why I love doing this podcast, because whether I have one listener or a million listeners, I get about an hour, 30, 45 minutes or an hour with some really great, highly successful people a couple of times a week. And so if nobody else gets benefit, I get the benefit. And I'm really happy to have Conrad on the show today. Let me tell you a little bit about who he is. He is the CEO of a company called Procurability. He focuses on client success, employee engagement, and culture, product innovation. He's got more than 25 years experience in strategic procurement and supply chain management. So we're going to get really into the weeds about that just a little bit, because I think it's interesting how people become successful in areas that most people didn't even know exist. There are industries out, whole industries like supply chain management and procurement that most people don't know. I've got one of my uncles works for a supply chain management procurement company here in Nashville, Tennessee area. And like, it's not sexy. There's nothing like cool about it from the outside looking in. But once you get under the hood, it's like, holy crap, this is really cool. So we're going to get into that. Conrad has consulted with numerous Fortune 1000 and global companies in a variety of industries, including gas, utilities, technology, banking, insurance, hospitality, healthcare, et cetera. He's on a lot of boards of different organizations that have lots of letters that probably, unless you're in the procurement space, you probably wouldn't know. But things like the USMA, UPMG, procurement leaders, and SIG. He's got a bachelor's degree from the University of Washington. And one of the coolest things about him, if you go to his website and look him up at procurability.com, you're going to see a picture of him on top of a mountain covered in snow. He's a former retired sponsored athlete and a ski mountaineer, and he lives in Lake Tahoe, where he gets to do a lot of that. So Conrad, thank you for being on the show today, man. I'm really glad that you're here. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
I'm fired up to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I first want to talk about this ski mountaineering thing, because I think that's really, really cool. I've only gone snow skiing one time in my entire life, and that was at Paoli Peaks, Indiana, which is like fake snow, created snow. I think the elevation might have been 2,000 feet. I mean, we're talking not even a mountain. So how did you get into like ski mountaineering, and what the heck is ski mountaineering? What's the difference ski?
First of all, that photo that you referenced on the website, that's from 14,000 feet. So it's a little bit higher than your experience. But, I grew up in Seattle. My parents were super into the outdoors, and we would spend every weekend driving out to the snow park, parking on the side of the highway and cross-country skiing up a road, finding a little hill and playing on it. Literally from age of 2. And actually, it started before that. My dad would pull me behind him. He would just like lash me into a sled, and I would just like ride in this sled. And they were very focused parents, very focused outdoors people. So That's what we did. That's what I did. It's just, when that's what you do, then that's what you do. So as you know, it's where you grow up and what you're exposed to, and that creates a love for it. So that's, starting at 2 years old, that's what I did. And now super fortunate to live in Lake Tahoe, where I'm surrounded by beautiful peaks and the outdoors and people who share my passion. And that's what I spend my free time doing when I'm not chasing after my 11-year-old who's rapidly becoming a better skier than I am. Just cruising around here skiing.
So what is ski mountaineering? What is that?
It's a fancy word for climbing up the hill and skiing down it. I learned a long time ago that walking uphill is okay. I can do it, and it's like tolerable when you get the opportunity to ski down. What baffles my mind is people who climb mountains and then walk back down. I mean, why would you walk down when you could ski down? So it's basically walking up, skiing down.
So you carry all your equipment, all your skis with you. So you don't take the chairlift. You make your own path. You go to the top and you come back down.
No, yeah, it's proper mountaineering. You're out there. I mean, it's definitely it can get pretty sporty. It's definitely adventurous. Yeah.
So in April of 2009. I don't backpack much anymore, but I'm a backpacker for years. I would go on a bunch of trips a year. We'd spend 3 or 4 days backpacking, and I live in Nashville. So we're close to the Smoky Mountains. Highest elevation is like 6,600 feet. So we're very different than what you're experiencing in the Rocky Mountains out in Lake Tahoe. But what we deal with here is the same thing you deal with there, is the snow unexpected. Like snow can be expected. So in April of 2009, my brother and I met. He's from Atlanta and I'm from Nashville. We were going to meet and we were going to hike up to Mount LeConte. And Mount LeConte is one of the highest peaks in Tennessee. And it is the oldest active hostel resort in the entire Appalachian Mountain chain. And it's pretty cool. And they just celebrated their 100th year of operation this week. So it's really neat. And I own a cabin in the mountains now that I can see Mount LeConte. It's absolutely beautiful. But I digress. But my story is this. I didn't ski, but we got there to hike. We were going to hike 5 miles up to Mount LeConte and spend a few days, hiking on an Appalachian Trail and then come back. But when we got there, there was 2 feet of snow on the ground. This is in mid to late April. We weren't prepared for it, didn't have our gear, but we were like, we're doing it. So we went to the gas station and bought I think we bought a roll of duct tape and just duct taped our rain pants to our boots so the snow wouldn't get in. And it was the most miserable 5 miles of my entire life. So for people that choose to do that, like you, I don't know, man, everybody's got their thing, but more power to you. So I'm sure there's some more, there's probably business applications of mental fortitude and pushing through, because I can't imagine hiking up 14,000 feet with skis on your back is a lot of fun. Just like sometimes building a business is not a lot of fun. Is there any tie over or tie in from what you're doing in mountaineering versus your building businesses?
Oh, there's lots. How many hours do we have today?
As many as you need.
Yeah. And let's come back to this after we talk a little bit about the company. And when I talk about my background, I'll talk about a job that I had working in the mountains that actually has direct relevance. I think there's the one thing that comes to mind when you're doing something very, very intense is a focus and being in the now. And it's not really a business focus. It's not really, nobody's going to I'm not going to give you any strategic business insight here, but instead it's more of a stoic message. I don't know if you meditate, and I don't know if your audience meditates or focuses on mental preparation or mental acuity, but focusing on the now is very, very difficult to do. We're always worried about, oh man, I did that thing and that's going to have implications, and shoot, I've got that thing tomorrow, and oh man, what's going to happen if I don't do this by then? And right, this is everybody's brain all the time, constantly, right? We're always struggling with these thoughts. And what happens is it becomes a distraction. And what we need to do is focus on right now. What are you doing right now? The past is the past. It doesn't matter. The future may or may not happen. So what we need to do is focus on right now. What are you doing right now to optimize your immediate situation? So this happened to me the other day, a couple years ago. Actually, it was the day that photo was taken that's on the website. There was a pitch that was so steep. So let me set the stage. We're climbing probably 4,000 vertical feet from the car. We take a long meandering hike in. We get to the face, and we start to ski up the face. So the way you ski is you have skins attached to the bottom of your skis, and so you can, and your heel is released, so you can walk with your skis attached to you, so you don't fall into the snow, but then your skis have grip on them. And you do that until you run out of steepness, or until it gets too steep. Then you take your skis off, put them on your pack, and you put crampons on, the spiky, cool looking things that mountain climbers wear. You got an ice axe in one hand, ski poles in the other, or one pole in the other hand, crampons on, and now you're just going up. And it's basically, you get the right equipment, you're in good shape. Back to your hiking experience, you were miserable because you had the wrong equipment. There's no bad weather. There's no bad weather. There's only bad preparation or bad equipment. So people say, oh, this is dangerous. And scuba diving is dangerous. Hang gliding is dangerous. Mountain climbing is dangerous. Well, they're dangerous if you're not prepared, you're not trained, you're not skilled, you don't have the right equipment. So back to this day, I'm climbing up, and I'm below a friend of mine. He's setting the track, and I'm following the steps. And at one point we're going straight up, and down below you can see 1,000 feet below the ski slope. If you fall, you're sliding 1,000 feet below, which doesn't sound like fun. But then we have to traverse left above a cliff, and then continue straight up. And now, if you fall, you got a cliff below you, and that's going to be real bad. So that can have very serious consequences. And the whole don't look down thing becomes real. And what I learned in that spot, in that moment, was, what I wasn't worried about? That email that was in my inbox that I hadn't responded to.
That's true.
I wasn't worried about preparing for my podcast with Jason Duncan. I was worried about where I was putting my hands and where I was putting my feet, and nothing else. I had never been more alive in the now, more present in that moment, that I was living in that instant than at that specific moment. So that was a mind clearing exercise. It was incredibly powerful, sort of meditative moment. So that's my connection for you. Wow. A little bit of a long story there, but
no, that's really fascinating. I wrote down a couple of things I want to dive into, but I can think about. I hosted a virtual happy hour with my mastermind and a bunch of other business leaders. It was about 4 or 5 months ago, and the topic of conversation started turning towards what we do for release, what we do for just disconnecting from the emails, like you mentioned, and the contracts that we're working on, et cetera. And what we discovered is that for most of us, there was some sort of adrenaline thing as men that we seek. So for you, it's mountaineering and skiing. For me, it's riding really fast on my motorcycle or driving really fast in my car. It's like going fast. Mm-hmm. And so others of us have different things, like they go water skiing, or they do skydiving, or things like, there's always this release. And I think it's because in that moment you're in control, but slightly out of control. Like you're trusting the process of the moment. And I love what you said, that there's no bad weather. There's just bad equipment. You're not prepared. So business, just like those other things. I mean, business is dangerous if you don't have the right equipment, and ski mountaineering is dangerous if you don't have the right equipment, if you're not prepared. So I love that concept of being prepared, because all I had was rain. I had frog togs. You know what I'm talking about? Like frog togs are like this cheap stuff that you wear. That's all we had for rain gear, and duct tape on what I thought was waterproof boots. So that made it dangerous. If you had visited me,
if you had come to my house and I had outfitted you, you would have had a great time.
Well, let's do it. Like I've been to 14,000 feet on Pikes Peak, but I've never been like anywhere else. I need to get climate acclimated or elevation acclimated, because man, when I got to the top of Pikes Peak, the lack of oxygen was bad for me. I need to do climatic, or what is it called? Acclimation to that. Yeah. What feet, like elevation, do you live at in Lake Tahoe? What's the elevation versus where you were at 14,000 feet?
I live at 6,000, and my sort of casual weekend skis are up to about 9,500 feet. So but it's interesting. I get sick at 12, and really? So I know this. And back to your question about what's the connection, there's no bad weather, just bad preparation. Well, in business, there's no if you prepare and you practice and you have contingency plans and like all that, then you're going to be fine. If you know that something is going to happen, if you know that things don't work out and you prepare for them, then you can get through them. So I get sick at 12,000 feet. I get a splitting headache and I feel miserable. So as soon as I get to about 10, 11,000 feet, it's super easy. It's like crazy easy. I just take two Tylenol. And then when I get to the top, I take 2 more Tylenol and I have 0 problems. If I don't do that, it's debilitating. I get a splitting, massive headache and I feel absolutely miserable. I can't focus on what I do. It's dangerous, but a very, very simple step can make that go away.
Wow. Well, I think there's tons of business parallelisms here with what you're doing in ski mountaineering and these adrenaline sports that us men seem to get involved in. The preparation side of it, the release side of it, and also I think knowing your limitations. Building a 6-figure business versus building a 7-figure and low 7-figure like 1 to 5 versus building a high 7-figure 6 to 10 versus building an 8-figure versus building, those are all like elevations. And so many of us can walk straight up to, like you said, 9, 10,000, 12,000 feet, no problem. But once we cross that threshold, that's when things start going a little haywire. We have to acclimate to that new level. And unfortunately, a lot of us as entrepreneurs, we don't ever get to that point where we acclimate. I can build a 7-figure business. Things are going really well, but I can't seem to push past 6 million, 7 million. It's like it stops. And I think maybe that's what we need to think about is how do we acclimate that? And so what would you recommend for business people looking to acclimate to those new elevations of success in business?
Yeah, it's changing your mindset, right? And I think, tying it back to, riding your motorcycle really fast, the reason, there might be an adrenaline release, but it also might be because you're focusing on the now. You're not thinking about your emails in your inbox and your mortgage statement. You're just focusing on hitting the apex of the turn and nothing else. I think that applies to your question here. How do you acclimate to the current situation? How do you break through? I think so. I've got a couple different ideas. One is if you think that if you're trying to do a little bit better, then you will do a little bit better. If you're at 6 million and you want to get to 8 or eventually 10, you're going to think about like, okay, I need to work 20% harder. I don't think that's the answer. I mean, I don't think anybody listening or any of your friends or any business leader is looking to spend 20% more time working. We got to figure out a different way to do it. So we had to challenge yourself to double the size of your business this year. Don't go from 6 to 8, go from 6 to 12. What do you need to do to double? Give yourself such a goal that you cannot do it in your current situation. And you are forced to hire a new team, outsource a new project, bring in new resources that you hadn't thought of before, totally reinvent something that you're doing today. Something that is like tedious and transactional. How do you automate that? How do you get that off your plate? Look at the stuff you're spending your time doing that is a waste of time. Get rid of it and focus on the growth things. Like you got to not look for incremental gains, but look for big giant gains. And you are you going to double? Maybe. If you double, great. If you only increase by 50%, holy cow.
I think there's some real deep wisdom in this. If people will really listen to what you're saying, I'm going to insinuate or assume some things, and you correct me if I'm wrong. But before you start your trip up the mountain, you have to look at the whole thing. You look at the whole picture. What's my route? How am I going to get up? Where am I going to walk to? And what's my route down? What gear do I need to get there? So it's a big picture thinking. But once you start the trek, your focus, like it's 100% zeroed in what I have to do right now, focused on the now. So to your illustration or analogy for me riding a motorcycle or driving the car fast, like when you're doing 150 miles an hour, not that I've ever done that, but when you're doing 150 miles an hour, you can't focus on your radio, your phone, you're not focused on your passenger, you're focused on exactly right now. But before you start the trip, you're focused on what's the big picture? What vehicles are around me, just like you'd focus on the whole thing. So in business, I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs screw up. I think it was Trump who said this as a businessman, not as the president, but he said he has this insane ability to zoom out and then zoom back in. Like I can't remember who was telling me this, but it was somebody who knew Trump. This is pre-president Trump. This is just back when he was normal, the Don, when everybody loved him as a businessman. But he said, when he attributed to success was he could look at a business from the wide angle, like the trek up the mountain, what's the whole route? And then, but when he got in it, he could absolutely focus and not worry about anything else. And I think, isn't that kind of what we're talking about, is that in business or ski mountaineering, you got to focus on the now. Like, what do you have to do right now? After you've looked at the whole picture, focus on now. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. And 100%. And the other key is not doing everything yourself. So I grew the business from very small to what I thought was very large. And I didn't do that myself. I grew it from very small to a little bit less small myself. Not really myself. I still had a team. I still had other people, but like the significant gains came from bringing in the right team. And so, yeah, sure. Did I have the ability to zoom out and zoom in? And yeah, I think so. But I had HR issues that used to take hours of my time. And now I have a great HR team that just handles them all. And they keep me in the loop. So I guess I'm aware on the peripherals, but I don't have to spend any of my day solving those problems anymore. So I know when to engage and when to bring other people in to engage. And I think that's the key as well, is surrounding yourself with an effective team. I feel like this is a little bit of a cliche and I almost don't want to say it because everybody talks about it, but it's so true. Surrounding yourself with a good team, hiring good people to lead your business so then you can go lead the next business or acquire the next business or expand into the new industry. That's what you need to do. If you operate every day and you're running everything that you run today, and then you want to grow and run more things, you either have to say, I'm going to clone myself. I'm going to stop sleeping. I'm going to ignore my family. I'm not going to take any time for myself, or I'm going to hire somebody to do what I've been doing so I can go do something new and grow this other area or expand vertically, whatever the expansion model is. That is the other key to this, to my success, is hiring awesome people that I know when something happens, I'm like, you got this? They go, I got this. And then I'm done. I'm out. And I have utter confidence. I'm not like, oh shoot, hey, I haven't heard from you on that. What's going on? I don't do that because they've got it sorted.
Yeah, that's part of trust, making sure you trust and empower your team to do it, which is what delegation actually really is. Well, let's talk about business, because you've built a successful business, Procurability, and it's in the procurement space, supply chain management, et cetera. Tell us really briefly before we talk about specifics, what is supply chain management and procurement? Like, because that is, like I said at the outset in the intro, it's like, it doesn't seem sexy from the outside looking in, but once you get under the hood, there's a lot of cool stuff. And it's really the way the world works. This is how we get goods delivered to us.
Yeah. When you said it wasn't sexy, that cut me pretty deep, Jason.
Well, you're sexy. So that's all we need, right?
Oh yeah. Okay. That covers for it. So yeah,
Let's take a quick break to thank our amazing sponsors for making this podcast possible.
As an entrepreneur, I know that you have to deal with sales on a regular basis. I mean, every entrepreneur does. And if you aren't paying attention to sales as an entrepreneur, you're not going to be an entrepreneur for very long. But I've got a sponsor of this show called Dub that helps you bring the personal back to sales. If you want to figure out how to improve content creation, improve client trust, improve your sales process, decrease the sales cycle, because we all know time kills deals. If you want to increase client bookings and increase conversions, you need to take a look at Dub. There's a special offer for Dub for listeners to The Root of All Success at therealjasonduncan.com/Dub, and that's DUBB. What Dub does, I've been using this for years. I'm a huge fan, and I'm so honored that they're our primary sponsor of the podcast. But they have helped over 60,000 businesses around the world communicate better, to make sales easier, to make sales more personal. And Dub is built for growing teams. I mean, you can set up video emails, you can set up custom onboarding, you can do admin reporting, anything you need around video and sales and automation. Dub is there. You can try Dub now. Your conversions to sales are waiting. All you got to do is go to therealjasonduncan.com/Dub. And there you're going to get 2 weeks for free to try Dub. Plus, you're going to get 50% off your first 2 months of Dub. You can't beat that. So go check it out. Go to therealjasonduncan.com/Dub.
Thanks for listening to our sponsors. Now, back to the show.
So let's talk about procurement and supply chain. I think you nailed it, right? Everybody has things surrounding them all the time that are the result of supply chain and procurement. You're wearing clothes that come from a different country. They were probably designed in yet another country. So maybe designed in one country. Let's just use an example. Your clothing might be designed in Italy. Sample was made in Italy. Your clothing was manufactured in Bangladesh. It was shipped to you in your house in Tennessee. How did it get from Italy? How did that idea from Italy get to Tennessee? It's the supply chain. So the supply chain is physical goods. Typically, people think of supply chain as physical goods. So you have design and engineering and drawings from Italy being transported to digitally now to a factory in Bangladesh. Well, who hired that factory? Who spec'd out the factory? Who made sure that people knows what they're doing? Who makes sure that they're actually not using, slave labor? Who makes sure that they're following, good labor practices, et cetera, et cetera? They manufacture what it is that you need. Whether they do a good job, do they ever make mistakes? Is everything tight? Do they follow the spec? Do they deliver exactly what was designed? Then what happens when they're done? They put it in a box. They put it at the end of the aisle. The forklift picks it up. What happens next? How does it get from there to your house? That's also the supply chain. And that's typically what people think of as the supply chain. It gets moved to a truck, to a boat, off the boat, to a truck, to a warehouse, to a train, to another warehouse, to a store's warehouse, to the retail store's warehouse. So, right, Target, like if it's Target, for example, it goes to the Target warehouse, and then Target says which store needs this product. They have demand from different regions, from different stores that says everybody in Tennessee likes this shirt, everybody in Tahoe likes this other shirt. So let's move these shirts there and those shirts there. Then you show up and you want, I'm a medium and you're a large, and the medium in the shirt that I want and the large in the shirt you want is in the place that you want it. That's the supply chain. And then procurement that supports it is the buying and the purchasing of those goods. So every company does this. Every single company is involved in supply chain. Every company buys things. That's what we help optimize. We help companies do a good job of that.
When did you get involved in this business originally?
It's my first job out of college. I worked for a large management consulting firm in New York. So I grew up in Seattle, like you had mentioned. I went to University of Washington, got a degree in business, and went to a management consulting firm in New York, and showed up like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and was like, all right, what are we doing? Let's do this. Let's help companies solve problems. And they said, great, we got a procurement problem over here. And I'm like, what's procurement? and that was the end of it. Started doing it on day one and have been doing it ever since. So I always wanted to be a management consultant because I think it's a really neat career where you help companies solve problems across a variety of industries and a variety of problems. I fell into this strategic sourcing and procurement space. I loved it. The operational aspect of it, and stuck with it ever since. So
when did Procurability start?
So Procurability was founded in 1996 by the three founders. I was not a founder. I joined in 2001. The founders some of them were from the same management consulting firm that I was from, and through networking and other things, made the connection. And then I grew up in the company. I became a partner in 2007 and co-leader in 2017. And then we had a plan for me to take over CEO, which I did in 2022. Basically, co-led the company from 17 to 2022. Took over as CEO, and the other leader moved to chairman of the board, and then eventually retired. And now I run it myself. So it's been a 25-year journey for me, and it's been absolutely incredible.
Well, you mentioned earlier that one of your keys to success was having the right people on your team, and I can agree more. I think that is a key to everyone's success. But is that the one thing? Like I always ask the guests, if you had to narrow down all the things that you've been successful at, and you could say this one thing is what helped me become successful, is that the key for you, or is there something else?
Well, my one thing is my corporate mission, my philosophy that I run the business on. And I try to instill this in everybody. And I communicate this very verbally to all of our employees and all of our clients. I have 2 priorities and only 2. And I only focus on those 2. And the rest of it follows, because those 2 are, number 1, happy employees. And number 2, satisfied clients. So number 1 creates number 2, right? If I've got happy employees and I'm managing people's careers in a way that they're fired up and interested in, they're like coming to work every day, they're going to do a good job and over deliver against what we told the clients we would do. That creates happy clients. But if I focus on the team first, the clients will come. So I don't ignore the clients, of course. Like we're not just, playing foosball and drinking beer all day. I mean, I'd like to, let's be clear, but well, maybe not every day. But if we focus on the happy team, then happy clients will come second. So to answer your question, is it surrounding yourself with the right people? Turns out it is, because focusing on the right people is exactly what's created our success. And when we crystallize this message, I mean, there were a number of things that happened. Our business was successful, was always successful, always profitable, and always experienced positive growth. It was sort of lumpy and bumpy, and the growth curve was relatively shallow for many, 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 many years. And then a couple things happened. This was one of them. We said, okay, we're going to just focus on this. Like, how do we make this an awesome place to work? Let's just make people love working here. We did a bunch of things to focus on that. We had a service line expansion at the same time, where we figured that clients like us and like keeping us around as a result of those 2 focus areas. And that saw like monstrous growth for about 6 years. We quadrupled the size of the business in 6 years.
Quadruple.
Mm-hmm.
That's big.
It was bananas.
That is big. So as it turns out, having the right team is that key. I like what you said, 2 priorities: happy employees, satisfied clients, in that order, because one leads to 2. What is your experience from knowing entrepreneurs, and maybe you yourself did this early on, is when they focus only on number 2 to the exclusion of number 1? What happens in that scenario when they're focused on satisfied clients and to the exclusion of keeping their employees happy?
I see this all the time. I see this all the time. I see this with my clients all the time. They're focused on hitting the number. They're focused on, some meeting some forecast. They're focused on revenue or whatever it is. You just don't have a positive culture. People don't like to work there. People feel like a commodity. People feel like you don't care about them. And you'll have high turnover, and your business will stagnate, or the growth will slow as a result. I mean, honestly, like every day, my entire company turns their computer off. We're a virtual company, so it's, to use a physical analogy, every day my entire company leaves and goes home, and I have to convince them to come back the next day. If they think that you don't care about them, if they think that all you care about is the bottom line or the number, maybe they'll find a different place to work. And I can't afford that. I need the team. The team is like, we sell professional services. We didn't talk a lot about, we talked about supply chain and procurement, but procurability is a professional services company. That means I basically sell hours in lots of different forms, but I sell hours of work. Those hours of work are delivered by the people. I don't make a product in a factory. I sell hours, I sell people, I sell expertise and skills. So I need those people to be 100% fired up, dedicated, and enthused about what they do every day. If you don't have
So,
that, I'm done.
well, and I would agree. So who are your customers? Who are the people that perhaps are listening to the show that say, "Oh, I need somebody to help me procure products for my company"? Who are the people that you are serving?
My best customers, so every single company does procurement. Every single company buys office supplies, rents an office space, probably hires some contractors, hires some companies to do things for them, a marketing agency, a professional services firm. Anybody who manufactures something buys goods. Any company that resells things buys those products to resell them, maybe even stores them in a warehouse. Every single company does procurement. So every single company is my potential client. Anybody who feels like they don't do a good job of that, or doesn't know if they're doing a good job of that or not. Anybody who's like, man, I don't know how to manage cost. Like my margins are too low. I got to buy something at this price and sell it at that price, and I'm just not making any money. That's my client. Anybody who says, I got people buying stuff everywhere. I'm not really sure if we have good pricing on it. I'm not sure. We probably should write a national contract for this and consolidate everybody to buy off one contract, not others. That's my client. Anybody who tries to buy something and is experiencing material shortages or price increases, that's my client. I mean, to answer your question a different way, my clients are typically CEOs, CFOs, and often the head of procurement or supply chain who knows they have a problem or wants some cost improvement or some process improvement. Things take too long. Those are my clients.
So if we look at what you've been able to build with procurability over these last, I guess 22 years, 23 years, you've been with a company and now been the CEO for the last few years. If you look at that and you've been very successful, quadrupled the company over a 6-year period, how do you, Conrad, define success? What does that mean to you?
Well, there's a couple different levels, right? I try not to have financial success be a metric because just like my priorities for the business, I think that comes with it. We have focus on happy people, and the happy clients follow, and the business results follow, and they have. Personally, I focus on my own well-being and happiness and contentment. I focus on the same with the employees. And so, if I have people who are excited about their career and how they are progressing, then I see that as success. If I have people who have been with us for 10 years and longer, that's successful for me. People who see this as a great place to work and a place to build their career and a family. We used to have everybody over for, everybody would get together for the holiday party in our house. And, that was when we were really small, and like you look around and that's the family and everybody wants to work there and they all work together. They know each other. They've got each other's back. We maintain that culture. That's success. How do we do that in a virtual? I could have another whole podcast with you about how you maintain that in a virtual environment. You can't have everybody over for Christmas anymore. What kind of events do you have, and how do we get together to maintain that culture? But I see success as really personal enrichment, being happy with where you are, being excited, driven, challenged every day. That's how I define success.
Love it. So by that definition, do you consider yourself to be successful?
Wildly.
I love it. I love the
Wildly
confidence.
I still get to climb, not as many perhaps as I'd like. So maybe I need to work on that, but I still get to climb mountains and ski down them. I still get to go upstairs and play Legos with my son, go for a mountain bike ride with my family, spend every day with people I love, with clients that I respect, and doing great work. So, couldn't be happier. Absolutely.
Man, that's good. So as we get ready to close out the show, I always like to give the guests the opportunity to give some advice. So in your years of experience as a part of the leadership and management team of this company, as one of the partners, as an owner, as an entrepreneur, what is your best piece of advice for entrepreneurs? And I'm going to limit it because you've already talked about building the right team. We've already got that. That's already been, but besides that, what's your best piece of advice?
All right, I'll bring it home to the individual level, because this is something I feel pretty strongly about. So thanks for asking this question, making me think about this here. I'll just say, when you're a leader, you know what to do. When you built a company that was successful, you built it because you knew what to do. Yeah, sure, you might have made some mistakes along the way, but you made the right call more often than you made the wrong call. Or when it mattered, you made the right call. So you made it to this spot that you're in because you know which calls to make. So as you grow, here's my touch into the people. As you grow, you'll add the team to support you, right? You'll rely on them for input and guidance, and they'll provide their perspective and say, I think we should do this. And you'll say, hey, we've got a decision. What do you guys think? Take that advice, take that guidance, but make the decision that you know is right. You know how to make the call. So don't get into the situation where now you defer the judgment to the team. Still make that call. Don't make the call on the stupid stuff that doesn't matter anymore, like the HR example I gave before, some challenge that somebody else is going to handle. Like, I don't need to go make that call. I'm talking big decisions. I'm talking about big decision making, the vision, the leadership. What are we going to do about this big situation that we have in front of us? How are we going to make this big decision? Bring in the team, get everybody's feedback, but then you make the call, because you know how to make the call. You've made it so far, and don't forget that you know how to make that call.
Mm. And you know what? This goes back to something you said earlier, is that you have to trust your team, and you got to trust them to do the right thing and to make good decisions. But when it gets to that vision level, that's when you step in. That's our job as the leader. Our job is to step in for the big stuff. And I'm really glad, Conrad, that you said that, because so many listeners, so many entrepreneurs out there are so involved in the weeds of daily operations and making the decisions on, for example, what we're paying for packs of pens. Like, they're making those decisions. They lose all time and ability and energy to make the decision on, where are we going to go 6 quarters from now? What's going to happen around the bend? You can't focus on that when you're focused on the cost of pens. That's which is a good segue into just use procurability. Let them handle all that for you, and you could focus on the big stuff.
That's exactly right. And then you said something that made me realize that there's one more message in this, is that trust. You've said trust several times today. You hire a team that you trust and that can execute the vision. My closing thoughts there: you need to develop trust, and obviously you have by this point, their trust in you, so that when it comes time to make that call, you'll take their advice, and then you'll make the call, and they'll know that you made the right call.
100%. One of my mentors taught me one of the universal laws called the law of hindrance years ago. And the law of hindrance states that if you're being hindered from success in any area of life, whether it's financial, physical, emotional, spiritual, relational, whatever it is, the cause for that lack of success could boil down to one or two things. That's it. Lack of trust, lack of discipline. That's it. And so if you're having trouble in your business, maybe it's one of those two or both of those things. And what the theme of what you've talked about today is focusing on the now, which is trusting your equipment, trusting what you've planned, trusting to go through. And it's also the discipline to be prepared. Isn't that cool? Like, that's what we talked about today, the discipline to be prepared. Because like you said, my experience hiking up Mount LeConte was miserable only because I wasn't prepared. I didn't have the discipline to be prepared ahead of time. Although in my defense, we didn't know it was going to be 2 feet of snow until we got there. But Conrad, I want to say a big congratulations to you on the success and the longevity. I mean, you and I are probably the same age. You got a Beastie Boys and Pearl Jam book on the shelf behind you, which indicates, we're both Gen Xers and that's the music we grew up with. And so congrats on having the longevity in that business and sticking around for as long as you have. Congrats on your role as CEO and what you're doing to lead procurability and all of the success that you've had in working on these boards. So you've done great, man. Well done. Congratulations on your success. And I want to applaud you. So I'm going to give you the last word on the show today. Is there anything you want to say at all to the listeners? And of course, we will let everybody know how to get in touch with you on social media at the end.
I'll just wrap it up, kind of highlighting through a couple things that we talked about. But first of all, thanks for having me. Love it. I love the real talk. We're just real dudes, just having a conversation about, like, people ask me all the time, like, what's the magic? What's the secret? What one thing happened when you were growing up that made you successful? I'm like, there's no one thing. It's a series of events. And at the end of the day, it was lots of time being miserable in the mountains, being wet, that I realized I was tired of that. And it was time to get some real clothing and be prepared. And I'm serious. If you had done that hike, I've done that hike miserable. I've been soaked. I've slept with my boots inside my sleeping bag to try to get them to dry out, so the next day I'm not as miserable. Like, it's terrible. I've also done it where I got the right clothing. I built a good fire. I've got a hot meal. Totally fine. Totally happy. Rain's pouring down. It's miserable outside, but I'm super happy inside. Preparing, thinking about the options. You probably should have checked the weather before you went. You probably should have checked the trail report before you went. There's probably some more preparation that you've learned that you should do next time as a result of that bad experience. Okay, so what? You had a bad experience. You made maybe a bad call, but you didn't go try to climb Mount Everest without checking the weather. You went up Mount LeConte. You could have turned around and made it back to the car. You could have turned the heat on and you would have been fine. You don't make bad decisions when they're massive. You make bad decisions when you can recover from it, and the next time you can make a better one.
Love it. Conrad, thank you so much for that perspective, and thank you for being on the show, man. I'm glad we connected, so thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Well, there you have it, another successful entrepreneur and his story of success. And what I think is interesting here, if I could kind of recap what we talked about today, is that this idea of focusing on the now and this idea of being prepared. So when you are building a business as an entrepreneur, there is the need for focus. Focus stands for follow one course until successful. Like, what are you focused on? What are you paying attention to? Because if you're paying attention to the wrong things, you could step off the edge of that mountain and you're sliding for 1,000 feet or falling for 1,000 feet. So you don't want to do that. So make sure that you're focused right. And also be prepared. And I think one of the things we talked about, this idea is that business is dangerous without the right equipment. So what are you doing to get the right equipment? Obviously, procurability, and Conrad and his business partners, what they've built is significant and is significantly successful because they're building it with the right equipment. What are you doing to build with the right equipment? Who do you have around you? Do you have a coach in your life? Do you have an advisor? Do you have a board of advisors? Did you have the right people on your team, which we talked about? These are all the things that are going to help you be prepared for those dangerous moments in business when you don't know what's around the corner. You're not sure what's going to happen. Be prepared. So again, big thanks to Conrad Snover for being here. Make sure you check him out. You can go to procurability.com, and you can also look him up on LinkedIn at Procurability. Or if you want to look at his personal LinkedIn up, it's C Snover. It stands for Conrad Snover. So just look up Conrad Snover, CSNOVER. And you can also find him on YouTube. Just look up Procurability on YouTube. But again, big thanks to Conrad for being here. Big thanks to you as the listener listening to this show. I appreciate you being here, listening, subscribing, and leaving positive reviews so that we can get in front of more viewers and listeners. And by the way, if you're not watching this on YouTube, you should go check it out, because otherwise you wouldn't have known that I saw that Beastie Boys book and the Pearl Jam book on the bookshelf behind it. So go check it out. Thanks for being here. I'm your host, The Real Jason Duncan. And as always, Jesus is King.
Attention business owners. Attention business owners. Feeling burnout from running your business? Uncertain if you're nearing burnout? Take our free 10-question business burnout test at businessburnouttest.com to discover where you stand. With just 10 quick questions, you'll learn how to immediately begin making changes to regain freedom and success. Cut your daily operations time in half. Improve your quality of life and prepare your business for your future exit without losing revenue or profit. Visit businessburnouttest.com now and take the test. Thank you for listening to another edition of The Root of All Success with the real Jason Duncan. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, visit therootofallsuccess.com to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Follow Jason on social media at The Real Jason Duncan. See you again next time here on The Root of All Success.